friends, we want to welcome you to this celebration of life, our friend Jerry Kopel. And when I first met Jerry in the legislature, honored to have been elected to the legislature from the north side of town. I met Jerry, I'll never forget the first time I met him, and he said, "Have you started your card file?" And I said, "What card file?" And he said, "You've got to make a card of every legislator with the face on one side, and then on the other side, you put the name and the hometown, what committees they're on, what's the wife's name, what's the wife's maiden name, how many kids, where they go to school, stuff like that. Things I'm always interested in anyway. But I never thought about putting them on cards. So I was looking all day for my Kopel button in my cards, and I know I've got it somewhere, but I can't find it. So that's my early memory, and I wanted to throw that in. We do have some of our colleagues here that served with Jerry. J.D. McFarland, our former Attorney General, Lois Court, currently in the legislature. Marcia Johnson on the City Council. Larry Boning, a judge here in Denver. Charlie Brown, councilman. Ann Ragsdale from Adams County, along with Matt Jones, representatives both from Adams County. Pat Pasco, Rennie Fagan, Steve Ruddick, Miller Hudson, John Andrews, Don Everly, Tony Hernandez, and Dorothy Rupert. It's almost like the litany of the saints, isn't it? So let's get moving along here, and let's get moving along in our tributes here and our sharing of our wonderful stories about Jerry. And let's hear from Diana DeGette, our congressperson, made it all the way from back east in the snow.
I think Jerry made the arrangements because my plane last night took off on time and landed on time. That could have only been heavenly intervention. I've been thinking a lot about today's remarks because it would be impossible, all of you know this, it would be impossible in just a few minutes to encompass the entire breadth of a life like Jerry Kopel's. Jerry's devotion to his wonderful family, his intelligence, and his quiet dedication to detail, not to mention his extreme musical talent at the piano that we're hearing right now, only begin to characterize one of our state's most singular citizens. To get just a glimpse, and I mean this, to get a glimpse of his varied and deep interests, I suggest you just spend a few minutes on his website, jerrykopel.com. I first met Jerry in 1984 when Lino and I had the good fortune and luck to buy our first home in House District 6, where, of course, Jerry had been a longtime state representative. Lino and I knew Jerry because, like almost all lawyers in Colorado, we had also taken his bar review class, which enabled us to pass the bar exam in 1983. Lino and I both became active in the legislative district, and eventually I rose to the very important position of treasurer of Jerry's re-election campaigns. Jerry taught me a lot of really important lessons as a politician. The most important lesson he taught me, which is one I follow to this day, never take any election for granted. Jerry knew this personally because Jerry once lost an election. Some of you, I know some of my friends who are here know these things. After Jerry defeated Paul Swam in 1974, because he took it a little bit easy. He thought he'd have an easy re-election campaign, and Paul beat him in 1976. Jerry decided he was never going to lose an election again, and he took his seat back in 1978, where he went on to serve for over 2 decades in the state legislature. He was one of the most distinguished members of the legislature that our state house has ever seen, and I know some of his other former colleagues are going to talk about that today. He carried 110 bills as the chief sponsor, and probably his biggest national claim to fame was he passed our nation's first sunset legislation. In 1992, Jerry decided to retire and find some other interests. I was very fortunate to take Jerry's seat, although nobody could ever really truly have replaced Jerry. Along with a lot of advice, he made a very special offer to me, and now that I'm here today, I'm really glad I didn't take him up on it. In order to save some money and to do some recycling, Jerry offered to give me his car signs so that I could poster over my car signs on top of it, and here's one of them right here to say. And I'm glad I didn't take him, because we wouldn't have this wonderful memory today if I would have. He also gave me a lot of other useful advice, and the most important thing he taught me, if there's anybody planning to run for office here, I will tell you, walk the district. I walked the district twice. Jerry walked it over and over. That's the way you really get to know your constituents. Once I got to the legislature, Jerry did not abandon me. He called me up right away, and he said that he had just been waiting to tell me what my first bill should be in the legislature. I was on pins and needles. What was it? Revision of the entire consumer protection statutes of Colorado, landmark environmental legislation, an idea that had been dormant in Jerry's mind for all those years, just waiting to come out. It was groundbreaking. The Colorado Revisor Statute. Jerry said to me, every few years, the legislature has to pass the Revisor statute in order to update and streamline the laws and make sure they don't conflict with each other. I could hardly believe it, but then he went on to say, here's the reason to do this bill, Diana. Number one, you'll learn how to read the statutes. I was a little insulted because I was a lawyer, but he was right. They don't teach you how to read the statutes. Number two, you will learn the names of every colleague in the legislature, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate. And number three, when you run for re-election in 1994, you will actually be able to say you passed legislation. And Jerry was right. I passed the Revisor statute. P.S. I also passed a bill to update the mortality tables in Colorado at Jerry's sole suggestion. And so those were lessons that were important to learn. And those were lessons I think every legislature should learn. You can have the grandest bill, the best idea in the whole world, but if you don't know the legislative process, and if you don't know your colleagues, then that's just what it is, an idea, and it's not actually a statute. That's what Jerry Kopel taught me. Jerry, of course, for those of you who are from the legislators know, he was very free with advice to everybody, but especially new members of the legislature. And on November 30th of 2 years ago, Jerry actually wrote down some of his advice to legislators, which I think is so true at every level of legislation, at every legislative body, to every legislator. The first piece of advice he gave was the first remarks. Quote, you better be able to come down to the mic with good reasons why you support a bill, and they better be reasons not presented by another legislator. I guess you don't want to sound like an idiot. Number two, where to sit. Legislative friendships are like other friendships. And he goes on to say, and it's true today, you should sit with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle and befriend everybody. Number three, be sure that you make friendships, but also, cautions Jerry, don't be a hero worshiper. And finally, and to me, the most important advice anybody could give any legislator in any body, keep your word. So true, and advice I follow to this day. After Jerry left the legislature, he continued his influence with a column for the Statesman, and also as a special legislative advisor to the Attorney General, and in countless other ways to all of us. Once, in analyzing a long, complicated bill, Jerry realized that the General Assembly, some of you remember this, was about to legalize a controlled substance because the scientific name was misspelled in the bill. So here's my question, folks. What are we going to do now? What terrible calamities are going to befall us without Jerry to read all of the bills? I was privileged a couple of years ago to do a congressional citation for Jerry's 80th birthday and also for Jerry and Dolores' 56th wedding anniversary. And I say I was privileged to do this because so often I honor prominent citizens after they die. But to be able to recognize my friend, my mentor, the person who got me my start in politics, while he was sitting right there, was an unbelievable personal honor for me and one that I'll never forget. Dolores and David, Deirdre, and all of the rest of the family, we mourn for your loss. We grieve with you. But Lino and I were talking earlier today, we just couldn't help to keep this image out of our mind. It's the image of Jerry in some other better place, busily at work right now in his new volunteer position, editing the heavenly edicts.
Those are great comments. I was chatting with someone earlier and wondered if now that Jerry's in heaven, if we'll have to have a certificate of need legislation to be able to get in, like they did like he wanted for hospitals, remember? And just 3 little quick responses to your comments, Congresswoman, and they were great. Steve Ruddick was talking to me just as he came in, and former legislator and now senator, or former senator and judge. And he said his first assignment from Jerry on the Judiciary Committee when he first got appointed was to take his bills home, read them, and then come back with them marked up. And Jerry wanted to see them marked up and ready to do battle and gird their loins for the battle that whole day. I love that, don't you? And then secondly, my second comment or second reaction was seating. Remember how we used to argue over seating? You didn't want to put somebody who was from a district that was not totally Democratic next to a Republican because they could be influenced. So they always put me right on the very edge so that I could try to influence those Republicans, but I had a great time doing that. And then I see the Duns are here. Now let's continue our celebration with some words from Wilma Webb, former state representative who served with Jerry. He's got some wonderful stories, and our former First Lady. Wilma, would you come forward?
Thank you, Dennis. Dolores and David and grandchildren and all the family and to everyone here. It's so wonderful to see so many people from so many different aspects of Jerry's life here to celebrate his life. I have come today just as this great gathering has come to pay our last farewell to one of our best. And I can truly say that Jerry was a person who served in so many capacities, but in the legislature he was loved, he was respected, and he was admired by every member there. Jerry was a lawyer, and every time you hear the word lawyer, it sort of sends chills up your back. But he was a lawyer who had great respect. He had great respect for the letter of the law, but even more so, he held a greater respect for the spirit of the law and what it meant for the good of society. Jerry Kopel was also a legislator who chose his areas of concern, the choice of words and language, and his demeanor with great respect for the concept of possibility for a better society based upon fair and just laws. He knew the power of words, and he knew the responsibility of the usage of those words. And anyone who knew Jerry knew that he chose his words very meticulously because he really was trying to make our state and our world progress, and he knew that the way to do one way was to make laws that had good language and that moved us all to a better place. As a member of the Colorado House of Representatives, Jerry was a leader. He was a teacher, a writer, a mentor, a historian, and a friend who used his talents to improve our state and world through good government. Anyone who knew Jerry knew that if you went to him, you would get the best in terms of telling you how to get something done. Some of us were really at a loss when the state decided that they were going to have term limits in the legislature, because we knew that we would lose some of the historical perspective that was passed from one body of legislators to the next. Well, Jerry was there, and Jerry had that perspective of the history, and so he was always there to tell us why a particular bill was the way that it was and what had happened to it and why we were doing what we were doing. And so we were very appreciative of what he was trying to do to try to help us to make better law. And I remember Jerry for his easy way of approaching you, for your support, for something that he felt was very important or something that he felt needed to be opposed. He was never, ever heavy-handed. He was graceful, yet firm to his position. He was also always already informed on the issues. If you wanted to know about taxes, Jerry knew more than anybody else about taxes, and that was just the truth. And he gave you food for thought about what he was telling you. He never tried to tell you what to do, but he would let you consider it and think about what you should do best. In other words, he was a wise man who always looked to understand the future ramifications of an issue. Jerry could do this because he knew the history of the legislature and he knew the governing rules. He knew which rules were put there in place, the rules that were there to help the ruling party or the rules that were there to hurt the party that was not ruling. He knew what to do. He knew whether a particular rule was there to help the party to move its agenda forward or to suppress an issue that someone didn't want to see go forward. I remember Jerry as an expert in knowledge of the process for legislating law. He was a successful main sponsor of bills, and if you ever really wanted to have something done and you were in the minority party, you would give it to Jerry. There were so many laws that he passed that affected people that were wide and far, and people that never even met him. Because of Jerry and his fair housing law, the bill that he carried back in the 50s and the 60s, all people, regardless of race or ethnicity or sex or sexual orientation or religion, can purchase a home anywhere where they can afford to buy it because of Jerry Kopel. Because of Jerry, large and small businesses have been able to prosper and progress with less unnecessary regulations and requirements. Because of Jerry Kopel, taxes are more fair than they would have been, even with the recent considerations that have passed, because of Jerry Kopel. Because of Jerry's sunset law, which provided for state departments to be reviewed periodically in order for them to continue to exist, allowed for better government. And the list of his accomplishments and his laws go on and on. I particularly remember Jerry because he was a legislator who stood with you repeatedly on what he believed would make our state and our nation better. In 1984, it was the 4th year that I had carried the Martin Luther King holiday bill. It was the 7th time that Jerry Kopel had seen such a bill, because he was always there. He was also there in 1970s when Wellington carried the bill as well. Wellington carried it 3 different times. And I'm reminded of the quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which said, "The true measure of a man is not where he stands in times of convenience, but where he stands in times of controversy and challenge." State Representative Jerry Kopel stood many, many times on continual basis and issues trying to improve our state. During the deliberation of bills intended to adopt Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday as an official holiday, Jerry stood there not only in committee, where he had seen it many times, but also he was the one legislator who was the tactician who gave me the necessary tools to make sure that the bill passed on its last consideration. House Bill 1201 had been to the Senate, and it had been amended, and it was just about to be adopted by the House when it returned. For some reason, the Speaker of the House gave us, and it never was done before, that Friday off before our consideration of bills. The reason that he did that was that he wanted to lobby all of those that he knew were supporting the Martin Luther King holiday bill. And so we were off that Friday, and the bill was going to be considered Monday instead of Friday. And so all that weekend, legislators were lobbied to change their aye votes to a no vote. And so when we came in on Monday morning, I was faced with what should I do to make sure that this bill passes. Well, on Saturday, I made a telephone call to Representative Jerry Kopel. And Jerry listened to what could possibly happen to the bill in terms of its defeat. And he said, well, Wilma, I'm going to tell you what you have to do. He said, you have to stay within the rules, but you must do this if you want to see this bill pass. Because of Jerry Kopel, the bill passed. What he had instructed me to do was to move all of the motions, good and bad motions, myself. And by doing that, I had the ability to stay at the microphone until the motions that I wanted to pass were adopted, and finally the bill was adopted. That could not have happened without Jerry Kopel, because I would not have known to do that. And so I want to say to Dolores, and to David, and to everyone who worked with and who knew Jerry Kopel, that there's so many thousands of people out there who do not know the value of Jerry Kopel. And I'm very, very thankful to him, as I know that they are, for what he did. And so I know Jerry is probably in heaven now, and what he's done here on this earth, he has done. And I'm sure that in his facing God, that God would say to Jerry Kopel, well done.
Wonderful comments from our former First Lady and State Legislator. I always enjoy hearing that story, no matter how many times I hear it. It's a great story about how he helped with Martin Luther King Jr. bill. And now we have someone who needs no introduction. We're especially pleased that he and Dottie Lamm could be with us. Let's welcome Richard Lamm, our former governor.
So I was at a dinner party last night with people that had deep roots in the community. And I asked them what their memories were of Jerry Kopel. And because I really think the ultimate obituary is really in the hearts and minds of people and how they remembered them, I'd really like to share these with you. This was a good man, modest, humble, hardworking, highly ethical, dedicated. One of the other people said, a consumerist before there were consumerists. One of them remembered his bar review course and the quiet indignation with what he dealt with the Uniform Commercial Code, which was, in his words, and correctly, written by the banks and stacked against the little guy. Another person at this party said he had giant brains but no ego, and how true that was. Somebody else just talked about his doggedness and his persistence. I met Jerry in 1966. We were running at large. Back in those days, we ran in the whole city and county of Denver. For the last time, by the way, because in the election of 1966, they sub-districted, and then we, from then on, ran in districts. Jerry had been elected in the Johnson landslide in '64, so he was an incumbent. But even at that time, he was a font of knowledge and took myself and a guy named Hub Safran, who also got elected that year, under his wings and helped us to try to go out and navigate this incredible, difficult dilemma of running in the whole city and county of Denver. Diana knows, but most legislators don't know the immense complexity of it. I remember in particular, he warned us against, there were these two women, Lord knows they still may be there, but that would guarantee you 2,000 votes out of the nursing home. It had a monetary value, but they would deliver. They'd go. And Jerry's moral compass was always observable. And it was, it was commonly done to go to those women and get their votes. But this idea of being able to talk to go to the Schottish dances, the Italian celebrations, the black churches, the West Side Schwitz, it just went on and its wonderful complexity and its deep patterns of the city and county of Denver. But the particular thing I remember is the gates plant at 6 a.m. in the morning. I don't think there was anything ever harder than to go down at 6 a.m. in the morning and shake hands with people who didn't want to shake hands. In the legislature, so back when 1966, when I took my seat, there were spittoons in the legislature, unbelievable. And Doc Lamm, no relationship, L-A-M-B, he was from eastern Colorado, carried a gun in the legislature. And Jerry took us around and introduced us. What I'd like to do is again we all know how hard Jerry worked, and it really is true in the legislature. So much of the work is done by a very small percentage of the people. I'm tempted to think of that old analogy between show horses and workhorses, but Jerry was definitely a workhorse and a good, decent man. But he was partisan, but he was that consummate professional first. And I got a poem that I got to read to you that reminds me of Jerry. And it's by Phyllis McGinley, and it's called The Lament for a Wavering Viewpoint. And it goes, I want to be a Tory, and with the Tories stand, elect and bound for glory, with a proud congenial band. Or in the leftish hallways I gladly would abide, but from my youth I could always see the other side. How comfortable to rest with the safe and armored folk, congenitally blessed with opinions stout as oak, assured that every question a single answer hath. They keep a good digestion, they whistle in their bath. But all my views are plastic, with neither form nor pride. They stretch like new elastic around the other side. And I grow lean and haggard while searching out the taint of hero in the blackguard, of villain in the saint. Ah, snug lie those that slumber beneath conviction's roof. Their floors are sturdy lumber, their windows weatherproof. But I sleep cold forever, and cold sleep all my kind, born nakedly to shiver in the draft of an open mind. Jerry Kopel was a partisan, was a professional, but he always really had an open mind. Thank you.
Great comments, Governor, that bring back a lot of memories. I will give you the name of one of those women from the west side that used that. That was a unique unique character named Sarah Singer. Do you remember Sarah Singer? I never remember, I can always remember when she was talking to someone in the neighborhood. I had been assigned to drive her, and she was on the phone and she was saying, "This Gallagher is such a nice fellow. He's so innocent, he doesn't even know me. He has to bring me a bag of money to get the votes out." And then Leah Robinson was the other one, that they both passed on to the arms of the Blessed Virgin Mary. But then the other one was Mike Pomponio. Do you remember that one? Boy, he gave me a baptism of fire when I first ran. Well, it's not my spot to take this, but we do have a letter here from Tillman Bishop, former senator and House member from Grand Junction. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but in the letter, he talks about meeting Jerry and getting to know him. And Jerry instituted what they call Free the Leningrad Three. And these were 3 refuseniks being held in the Soviet Union in prison in Moscow for trying to escape the country of suppression, living in fear for their lives. And 2 of the prisoners were Jewish and the 3rd was Christian. So Jerry being the Democrat and I being the Republican, we had a bipartisan committee that they set up. And he remembers how the Soviets were so threatened by the fact that they got 80 legislators to go onto the petitions for the Leningrad Three, and they finally they got free from the Soviet Union. But his final, and then I saw Jim Kroll here from the Denver Public Library, and we want to thank the library for having a wonderful exhibit of that to commemorate that wonderful event as well. And I see that Beth McCann and Pat Pasco are here too, and I hope that I said their names. But let me just read to you the final paragraph here. Finally, Jerry and his wife Dolores have always been a team, working together in their married life, including raising the family. My best to you, Dolores and David. May you always be proud of Jerry, his success in life, and his many accomplishments. The state of Colorado has lost a true, dedicated public servant, and many of us have lost a friend and colleague. God bless and be with Jerry as he travels to the next adventure through eternity. Signed, Tillman Bishop and Mrs. Bishop as well. And now we're continuing, dear friends, in our celebration of this wonderful mystical life. And we're going to first hear from Kathleen Kopel. Kathleen is a student at Tufts University, and we're going to hear from Kathleen first. Kathleen. Well, and we're also going to hear from the other two, too. Let me introduce them. Coming up here as a team. The Kopels do things in teams. And we've got Andrew Kopel, who is at Boulder High, and he will graduate in 2014. And also here is Maggie, who is at New York University, and she's going to graduate in 2013. And I was just sharing with Maggie, because she and the family have been to Ireland, because their mother's maiden name is Dolan, you know, Deirdre Dolan, and they went to Sligo. And I thought of that wonderful poem on William Butler Yeats's grave. Cast a cold eye on life, on death, horsemen pass by. Under bare-bent Mulban's head in Drumcliff churchyard, Yeats is laid. So we want to hear from them. Great.
We knew a different Jerry Kopel than many of you here today. Growing up, he wasn't a politician or a lawyer. He was just our grandpa. We enjoyed board games, drew pictures, learned magic tricks, and played poker. We all had the privilege of a very happy and very rich childhood with our always loving grandparents. As we grew older, we came to engage with Grandpa on a new level. Although he remained foremost our playmate and caregiver, as we grew and developed our own priorities, we began to appreciate him in new ways. We've always known what a dedicated and extraordinary civil servant he was, but especially since his death, we have heard so many stories about his character and we are grateful to everyone who has shared those stories with us. Above learning about his gentle nature or his sense of humor, we have heard so much about his sense of service, something many of you here have witnessed as well. And it is that which we want to talk to you about today.
Service to Grandpa meant having lasting impact. Everything he did with passion and without a timeline. From writing the school newspaper, he went on to have a lifelong career as a journalist, and he was writing articles literally as long as he possibly could. Within the legislature, he never viewed his obligation through the lens of re-election or popularity. He wanted to make a lasting impact on the people and laws of Colorado. Even within family life, Grandpa acted with a sense of service and impact. He and Grandma were married for nearly 60 years. A couple months ago, Grandpa told us that it was one of their rules to always kiss before they went to bed, no matter what else was going on. Grandpa showed a profound dedication to his family, and he taught us what it means to have a strong marriage. Grandpa never did anything halfway, and he instilled this sense of dedication that accompanies service into all three of us. For me, this has translated into extracurriculars and into academics. I began to be involved in the student council in 6th grade, no doubt motivated by my grandparents' passion for politics. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. I remained an active member of my student council for 7 years, and the interests I developed there have remained with me ever since. Right now, I am planning on becoming a doctor. The pre-med requirements have been strenuous thus far, and I know that I have years of school and research ahead of me before I am close to achieving my goals. As daunting as this seems at times, I have learned from all my family, and especially from my grandpa, that it is worth it to stick to your passions. My sincerest motivation for becoming a physician is the desire to serve others, something that certainly stems from my grandpa's example. Thank you to him and to Grandma for teaching me what dedication means. To Grandpa, service also meant perseverance. He didn't do things that were popular. Becoming a holiday because civil rights was a cause he truly believed in, not because it was popular. To the contrary, it cost him politically. We have been raised with a deep sense of conscience and have each directed ourselves down a path towards fighting for equality for someone, whether it be immigrant rights, gay rights, women's rights, or just the rights of the individual in general. We always knew that our parents raised us with a strong moral compass and a sense of obligation towards the community, but to learn how far back this investment in civil rights stretches has been both profound and inspiring. On my end, I'm planning on becoming a lawyer. Grandpa has told me for years that he thinks I should be a politician. I had been deterred from this path because I thought that working in elected office meant you had to compromise your beliefs or that you couldn't maintain personal morality serving as a delegate. The more I learned about Grandpa and Grandma, the more I learned this isn't true. Grandpa was proof that you can work for the people, work towards what is best for the whole state, and still uphold what you believe to be true. Our particular interests within the legal sphere are quite different, but the moral lessons that he has taught me about law will guide me my entire life.
Grandpa taught me it was the value of taking sincere interest in the people that you love. We've heard stories about all the various areas he was involved in, which makes the depth of his interest in our own lives even more profound. Every Christmas brought envelopes with which Grandpa had drawn on, representing whatever we were most interested in at that time. He and Grandma bought me my first drum set. Grandpa had a lot he could have bragged about, but he also loved sitting around and listening to what we had to say. We only found out about his past through probing questions. This is something that he passed on to our dad, who has learned physics, Spanish, and soccer for us. We have been so lucky to grow up in a family so invested in our lives and in our interests. It is by no means something we take for granted, and it is something that we will always carry with us. It is in this vein that we all try our hardest to take an interest in others and in others' causes and passions, which calls us back to the most fundamental legacy Grandpa leaves us, service.
We have done good work and served with integrity in our communities in Boulder and beyond. While he was alive, it was a great privilege and true motivation to see his sense of pride and contentment in our dedication to others. But now that he has passed away, Maggie, Andrew, and I, together, use this time to rededicate ourselves to the compassion towards others and the dedication to serve that he so genuinely exemplified. Our grandpa has passed away, but his profound legacy of service survives in all of us. As William James said, the great use of life is to spend it for something that outlasts it.
Well, what a wonderful commentary. And to paraphrase what William Butler Yeats said, let Jerry's glory be that he has such wonderful grandchildren. And now we're going to hear from David Kopel, who, as you know, is Jerry's son and research director of the Independence Institute. We wanted to make sure that there's a little representation from the other side here. And also adjunct professor of advanced constitutional law at Denver University. So let's welcome.
The brilliant Jerry Kopel. So wrote Tom McAvoy in a wonderful article in the Pueblo Chieftain last Sunday. All of you today here knew or knew of this brilliant man. Yet he was not always brilliant. His native intelligence was so strong that during the middle of second grade, he was promoted to third grade, which didn't work out very well because he was soon in over his head with his new peers socially and physically. He lost confidence in himself. His grades at school became mediocre. From grade school through most of his time at the University of Colorado, the record of his life contained little to foreshadow the man you all know. At that time, he was even a Republican. No kidding. He was quite an entertaining piano player for his friends. And although the journalism department at the University of Colorado urged him to major in something else, he somehow got himself the position of editor of the Silver and Gold. He took advantage of this position to ask a young reporter for a date. She refused because she was dating someone else at the time. Months later, he tried again, and this time she accepted. During the next week, they dated 6 out of 7 nights, which set the precedent from that point forward. Granted, many of their dates consisted of laying out the next day's edition of the Silver and Gold. For them, working together was very romantic. The day that Jerry became Jerry and Dolores was the day that changed everything. By the standards of the time, she was a very unusual person, a woman who wanted to be a lawyer. She was also very unusual in that she was his intellectual peer. They knew that they wanted to get married soon. At the request of her parents, they waited until she finished her first year of law school. By then, he had worked his way up from the Walsenburg World Independent to the Rocky Mountain News. Because the Rocky Mountain News was a morning paper, he worked during the evening. Because courts and clients expect lawyers to be around during business hours, she worked during the daytime. Jerry quickly decided he didn't like being away from his wife so much, or at all. So he too decided to become a lawyer, taking classes at DU part-time while working for the Rocky. Like her, he finished first in his DU class. In part, this was because she let him use her course outlines. More fundamentally, it was because of his total commitment to the team of Jerry and Dolores. While he had plenty of job opportunities, there was only one job that he wanted, and that was to co-found the firm with Kopel and Kopel as soon as he graduated. In August 1960, half a year after I was born, the Denver Post profiled this singular couple in an article titled, "Lawyers Share Love of Work." The article concluded with a quote from Jerry. "I think it takes a special combination of people to be able to get along together all day and all evening. Like all couples, they have challenges, difficulties, and fights. As brilliant attorneys, they sometimes enjoyed a good argument. Whatever the issues of the moment, they both knew with certainty that they were absolutely, completely, and irrevocably committed to each other. The union was forever." About a month ago, my father and I were watching the Denver-Pittsburgh playoff game. although watching is not exactly the right word, since his vision had deteriorated so badly that he couldn't see much. The man who had once walked mile after mile every day to campaign door to door now needed help to move from his bed to a chair. He didn't die all at once, but in incremental steps over a long period. Both he and my mother, who spent all of her time caring for him, were well past exhausted, beyond the end of their rope. My mother came in the room during the fourth quarter. He saw her and said, "We'll laugh about this one day," by which he did not mean that together they would taunt the Steelers fans. Jerry Kopel sometimes made mistakes, but he was right much more often than he was wrong, and I believe he was right about this. Jerry and Dolores will laugh together again. Their partnership endures. Many of its fruits are visible to us today, and many others are as yet unseen. So today we celebrate what has been and what will be. Thank you.
Now we're going to have a little slideshow. The technology here at the Botanical Gardens, due to city budget cutbacks, does not allow the music and the slides to be shown together. So just pretend you're listening to Jerry play in the background. year the Democrats in Park Hill have dinner, the Lynn Williams dinner. I saw Sylvia and Frank Sullivan here. And the dinner will not be the same this year because Jerry always played music for the dinner. He taught us that if music be the food of love, play on, give us excess of it. And that's exactly what he taught us. Now, there are CDs over here at the table. So Jerry was always very good about sending these out and giving them to us. But there are some over here. For those of you that don't have an original Jerry Kopel CD, you can pick one up. I want to thank the family for inviting me to participate today. I was honored to be able to share a few little stories that I remember about Jerry. So let us now continue our celebration, and we want you to share convivialities, intimacies, and cooperation of stories about him as we conclude our ceremony here.
Just push the red button.